This is January the 23rd, 1995. We're at Betty and Curtis Hutchings at 415 West Rich Avenue in DeLand. Both Betty and Curtis are 83 years old. Where were you born, Betty?
I was born here in DeLand, Florida, on West Rich Avenue, right across the street from where I now am.
And Curtis?
I was born in Madill, Oklahoma, and that was really a mistake. My folks took a buggy across the Red River into Oklahoma to visit friends, and then the floods came and they couldn't get back because there weren't any bridges. You had to just drive across the Red River. And so that made an Okie out of me instead of a Texan.
So what date did you come to DeLand?
I came to DeLand when I was 12 years of age in 1924.
And what were your parents' names?
My mother's name was Elizabeth Ann, and my father's was Wallace Ford. And mother came from Central Florida, and my father came from Maryland.
So you were born in DeLand, so
Yes.
Would you just tell us some things of your beginning childhood days, and then Curtis will tell about his.
Well, I remember a lot of things, but the land was a green place, lots of trees, and also a lot of moss. I remember that on trees. And the roads around our house were, when I was growing up, were first pine straw, and then they were shell, and then finally they became paved. And I remember riding my bicycle, learning to ride, when the roads were shell, and I had some chipped knees from falling off my bicycle many times. I remember that. And it was a pleasant place. Grocery stores would deliver groceries. I remember that, and that was nice. They'd come up in a big wagon, deliver your stuff to your house, and that was fun. My dad had a store, and
Down the boulevard.
on the boulevard. Yes, that's right. And as we grew up, we worked in that store on vacations and weekends and things.
And where did you go to school?
Went to DeLand High School, or elementary school first, and then DeLand High School. But in those days, there was a beautiful red brick school building facing Clara Avenue, and it was later burned, but it was there during my childhood days, and I went from the first grade through the 12th grade there. I graduated from high school in that same building, and so did Curtis. We both graduated together.
Well, you probably both have similar friends. What are some of your friends that you had? You knew each other in school?
Yes, we did, yes.
Okay. What were some of your friends' names or something special about them? Curtis,
Well,
do you recall?
Oh, yes. Well, the son of the principal, Robert Adams, was one of our good friends. Dot Sewell, the Sewell family.
He's a realtor.
A realtor. Bill Whitman, he was the local star athlete.
Do you remember any special little thing that might have happened that would be enjoyable to remember? That happened in school days, something?
Well, one thing that comes to my mind is I had ruptured appendix when I was 12 years of age. And I thought I was over it, and I came to DeLand. But it flared up again, and I had to be operated on, and I was admitted to the old hospital, which is now in the playground in the park.
Stone Street.
On Stone Street. And the interesting thing to me about it is in the room next door to mine was Lou Gim Gong, the noted expert on citrus fruit.
Yes.
And
Called the Luther Burbank of Florida, is what he was called.
sadly, one night Lou Gim Gong died while I was in the hospital.
And then you were about 12 years old?
Yes, I was 12, and the nurses were tiptoeing around, being very quiet. I knew something was wrong, so I said to one of the nurses, Mr. Gong died last night, didn't he? She said, yes, he did. So I well remember that.
Did you know anything about him before that time?
Oh, yes, I'd heard of him. He was very famous.
Would you like to tell something about him?
Well, I think Betty will probably know more about him than I do.
Well, my dad was a good friend of his, and I know one thing he did. He developed a grapefruit that would hang on the tree for 3 years. And that was very, very remarkable. He just devoted himself to doing all kinds of experimentation with citrus fruits. And he was befriended by an American woman who brought him to this country and nurtured him and did things for him. And
That's interesting.
I remember one thing that happened when I was going to school. I think I was in about the 6th grade. The Hotel Putnam, which was a yellow wooden building on West New York Avenue, burned to the ground. And during recess, that fire had started, and most of the class walked over, which wasn't too far, to see that building burn, to see wings drop from that building. I'd never seen a fire like that in my life. And, I think I got 25 demerits for going and not going back to class.
But a memory that
Yeah.
you'll always
I remember.
use. Can you remember anything about your teachers that you had in school? Something about them?
I surely do. Yes, I remember them. I remember my first grade teacher very well. Her name was Lillian Page, in Bill Page Park, the DeLand is named for her brother. And she was a lovely woman. I remember her very, very well. As we went on through high school, I remember people like this Cora E. Dill, who was my math teacher, and a very quaint, lovely woman who wore her dresses down to her ankles. Even in those days, that wasn't done because all the other teachers wore them around knee length.
Shorter,
And well, she was a very, very outstanding woman. I appreciated her. Mary Woodbury was my English teacher in high school, and her brother was one of the famous surgeons in the land, Dr. Woodbury. And in fact, I think he was the one who performed her operation, wasn't he? And
do you recall anything about your teachers?
Well, Cora E. Dill is the one that impressed me more than anyone else. And the thing that impressed me about her is that you wouldn't have to do things according to the book. If you had a proof which was original, you got more credit than the book proof. And another thing that impressed me was her way of disciplining people. She didn't have to say a word. She would give a look at a student, and the student would feel like falling through the floor, which is something I'd never seen before or since. And she got to be a good friend of mine. I, later on, many years later, would visit her when she lived in Pomona, California.
You mentioned something about the little boxing incident. Would you like to tell that?
Yes, the young men in DeLand High School got up the idea we'd get up a boxing team. And we didn't have a coach, we coached ourselves. And we arranged to box with kids from other towns as preliminaries before the main event. They had professional events in the old Triangle Garage, which is near the Boulevard and Rich Avenue corner. And our pay was we got to see the main event free. An interesting thing happened. One night my opponent didn't show up, and Bill Whitman said to me, he says, Kurt, he says, see that fellow sitting over there? Why don't you ask him if he'll box with you? So I went over and asked him, and I said, would you like to fight? And he misinterpreted me. He said, well, come on out and back and we'll talk about it. And we went out and back, and he says, shall it be with knives? I said, no, I meant box in the ring with boxing gloves.
Right. So you cleared that up very quickly, I see. Well, Danny was mentioning about the streets. Did you have any, about the straw streets and all, do you have anything to add about the streets of long ago, that they first were straw, and then, is that about the main memory of that?
And
Yeah.
I remember the boulevard. There was a row of trees right down the center of the boulevard, and they were beautiful. And when they widened the street, of course, those trees had to come down. And my father was on the city commission. I think he got a lot of flack about having to use those trees and having them go down to widen the street. And
The interesting thing to me about the roads was the road to Daytona, for example, was a one-lane brick road, just one lane. And if you met a car coming the other way, two wheels had to be off on the shoulder of each car in order to pass. Because it's just a one-lane road.
And those bricks would boil up in the summer if you're going to the beach. You know, maybe one brick would pop up on the heat, and you'd hit that, you know, with your car. Wasn't too much fun, that part.
Back when you were younger, did you enjoy the beach
Yeah,
some?
yeah,
or?
yes, that was a treat. Yes, we did. That and the Lynn Springs.
Yes,
The interesting thing about the beach was you go down the beach a ways toward the lighthouse, and you were all alone. No buildings, not a car in sight, completely alone.
Desolate almost.
so different from
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
What about the homes in DeLand? Were they fewer or in number, or were they different in sizes, or what?
Yes, they were. But I remember the old Landis home, which is lovely.
We were interested in about the homes of long ago. Were they very many, or were they scattered in different locations? Tell us about the homes.
Well, there's some lovely homes in DeLand. I think two of the largest homes that people probably would remember were the Mercer home and the Tatum home on North Boulevard. That's about where the vicinity of where Publix is. Not Publix, where Publix used to be, and where Goodies is now. That was the area, that College Plaza, where those two beautiful homes were. Then they came on down to West New York Avenue. There were lovely homes there. There was the Landis home. Mr. Landis was the Attorney General of Florida, and his son became involved in, of course, the famous Landis Fish and Hall law firm, the family. And their home was lovely. It was there where the post office is now. And right across the street was Sam Jordan's home. And that was a very remarkable place. He was an outstanding attorney here in DeLand. And then right to the west of that home, Jordan home, on the corner where a bank is now, was the Jackson home. And it was a very beautiful old home there. And so there were some lovely homes in DeLand. And I remember those in particular.
Do you remember anything about electricity? Did everyone have electricity back years ago, or?
Well, I think most people in DeLand did,
DeLand did,
when I came here.
What about refrigeration? Did they use ice, or did they use electricity, or?
Very few people had air conditioning, and most people just had ice boxes. They didn't have refrigerators.
I remember that about the ice box, because we would wait on certain days when they would deliver ice, either by a horse and wagon team or later on by truck. And on the days they delivered, they would be filling our ice boxes, big blocks of ice, and they would have to chip it away. There were chips all over the bottom of the truck or the wagon, as the case was. And those were the days we made ice cream, because we'd take big pans out and get all those chips and turn the crank of the old ice cream freezer.
Do you recall what the cost for the ice was at that time, or has that been too many years
I
ago?
wish I could remember. I do not remember that. I guess my dad paid the bill. I wasn't aware of how much it cost.
Well, I remember for 25 cents you could get a small block of ice. I guess must be about 25 pounds.
How long would that last, approximately, in your ice boxes?
It would last quite a while. Well, at least 24 hours.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
longer than that, yeah.
Iceman would have to come every few days at least.
What about the dress? What type of clothes? I'm sure they're different than blue jeans and sneakers like
Yeah.
now. Well, what were some of them? Do you remember what the young men wore at school days? And
Well, yes. The young men didn't wear short-sleeve shirts. They'd wear long-sleeve shirts, but they'd roll up the sleeves. No one wore short-sleeve shirts. But rolled up sleeves and trousers, pretty much they do today, except it was more conservative than today. No loud colors or.
what about hats? Did they wear hats or?
The men wore hats, yes. The young people didn't wear hats.
I can remember church, though. You weren't dressed for church as I was growing up unless you had hats, gloves, and bags with you. And that was just the way it was. And you bought a dress always thinking about what kind of hat you'd wear with that dress. If it was a church-going dress or a dress you'd wear to a tea. And they had many teas in those days. That was the era of teas. And people would have that for one of their social things.
One thing about church that I remember as a teenager is that almost every church in DeLand had a baseball team. Baseball was the big thing. And we had a church league. And they played each other. The champions of the league was always the First Baptist Church of DeLand. They were the league champions. A star on the First Baptist Church team was Stanley Culp, who was later a star in the Florida State League. In fact, he was voted the most valuable player in the Florida State League. And Clark Griffith, the manager of or the owner of the Washington Senators, was very interested in Stanley Culp. And he came down to watch him play, but he decided that he was too small to be a big league ball player. So Stan didn't make the big leagues, but he was a great player.
That's interesting about the ball playing because I've always been interested in the game. What were some of the other games you played as a child? Do you remember some of the games that you might have played as a child?
Oh, we played tennis. I'd never seen tennis till I came to Florida, but I started with tennis after I got here.
But before that time, childhood games, we played tag and hide and seek and, lots of other games like that. And
we played games that didn't cost money.
That's right. What about some of the parties? Did you have birthday parties
oh,
or things
yes,
like
we
that?
did. Birthday
Tell
parties.
us about some of the parties.
And Halloween parties. I can remember people would bob for apples. That was the whole thing there. As you grew up, you'd have a big tub of water and apples in it, and people would bob for apples at Halloween parties. And it always had some kind of a ghost-like creature that would appear, and try to scare the children a little bit. I just didn't get shook up too much about that, but lots of parties. Of course, you said birthday parties in particular. That was always a big thing. And Easter egg hunts. As a child, we always had Easter egg hunts.
Did you have group Easter egg hunts like
Yes.
downtown area, or it was just individual families?
Well, we had them in town, but around church things, going things, and also just as a party for your own home. We'd have an Easter egg hunt just for children. My mother had several. And they had pancake breakfast, too. That was a big thing in those days. I remember one of my birthday parties was a Aunt Jemima pancake breakfast. And
In many respects, it was a great time to grow up. We never heard of drugs. I'd never heard the word marijuana until I was about 30 years of age, I don't think. And all these other drugs. There was no drug problem at all. And very little crime problem. Everyone would leave their doors unlocked, even when they were gone, doors unlocked.
Didn't have to worry at all.
Didn't have to worry. And no one ever stole anything. It was very rare if anyone did.
As they say, those were the good old days.
good old days, yeah.
Well, now, did you both attend Stetson University?
Kurt didn't. Kurt went to the Naval Academy.
Okay, he went into the Navy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like him to tell a little bit about that, and I'd like for you to tell a little bit about Stetson. What age did you go into the Navy?
I went into the Navy when I was 17 years of age, shortly after I graduated from high school. I actually had the object of going to the Naval Academy when I enlisted in the Navy. And it's interesting how that came about. I was stopped by a man at the old post office, and he says, "Well, are you going to college?" And I says, "My folks can't afford to send me to college. I've got to go to work." He says, well, why don't you go to the Naval Academy? And I said, I can't go to the Naval Academy. You've got to be smart to go to the Naval Academy. He says, well, get smart. He says, study. Get smart. I said, oh, I could never make the Naval Academy. He says, of course you can. I did. It turned out he was the president of Florida Power, and he is a Naval Academy graduate. So I got to thinking about that, and I thought, well, maybe I can make the Naval Academy. And I tried to get an appointment, and no one would give me one, except Ruth Bryan Owen was holding her appointments by giving them by competitive exam. And I took the competitive exam, but I felt I didn't make it. And I joined the Navy to get in through the Secretary of the Navy's quota. And I was in boot camp just 3 weeks when I got a telegram from Ruth Bryan Owen that I had the principal appointment.
Tell them who Ruth Bryan Owen was.
Ruth Bryan Owen was a daughter of William Jennings Bryan, and she was a congresswoman from the 4th Congressional District in Florida.
And as we know, how you went right on and was retired as admiral, am I correct?
Yes.
And how many years were you in the...
Well, counting 4 years at the Naval Academy, I was in the Navy 30 years.
Do you have any special story that you'd like to tell us? Because starting from the beginning and then going to an admiral, I know you had many interesting things. Tell us something.
Well, I think probably the most interesting thing was the command I had in World War II. We, with the help of scientists from Caltech, we put together a weapons system based on magnetic detection. We could detect a submerged submarine with an airplane. And it was unique. The only weapon system of its kind in the history of the world, and only one of its kind in World War II. And we located and sank submerged submarines in World War II. And to this day, we're the only squadron in the history of the world to ever locate and sink fully submerged submarines.
Very interesting. Very nice. Well, I could just spend days listening to your stories. I know there's so many. Can you think of another one that you might
Well,
tell?
I think another thing I think was a little bit interesting was I was flying a fighter aircraft one day, and I had a total engine failure. And I was gliding toward a field with the intent of landing there, but I wasn't sure I could clear some tall pine trees on the edge of the field. And it just made me sick at my stomach to envision myself smeared against these pine trees about 80 feet up in the air. So at the last second, I decided I'd make another quarter spiral into the wind and set the plane down in some scrub oak trees. Well, the impact sheared the wings off the aircraft, but the aircraft never did touch the ground. And I had to crawl out of the aircraft and get down without breaking my leg or something, because I didn't get a scratch from it. But then the next day, a group of us went on a picnic, and I got in a softball game and broke my ankle playing softball.
We never know, do we? Tell us something about Stetson University, and if you think of something else to tell, we'll go back to you, because that's so interesting.
Well, of course, I went to Stetson, and those were Depression days, you know. My dad had 3 of us in school at one time, and that was so hard on him, I know that. But as a child, I'd always thought I'd go to Stetson, because Stetson had an unusual thing. Their drama department put on Shakespearean plays out in the open, in the forest of Arden, which is where the music school is now. And my mother would take all 4 of us, and we'd sit in the grass and watch the Shakespearean production. Well, it turned out to be a pretty worthwhile thing in my life, because I always liked Shakespeare after that, because I sort of knew the stories. But I enjoyed Stetson and went there, and after I graduated, jobs were scarce. and I'd get a job teaching history, which I was not qualified to teach unless I'd gone to summer school and prepared for it in the summer. And my dad said, don't do that. He said, you want to teach math or English. He said, you go on and go back to school. I had a chance to get my master's degree paid for it Stetson if I taught one class, which I did. And so that's the way I got through my master's degree at Stetson, but it worked out that I got a job at DeLand High School the next year.
And how many years did you teach?
I taught actually all together, counting my years at Stetson and my years at DeLand High School and my years at the community college, 44.
44. Well, I can remember what an outstanding teacher you were in math. So many people have mentioned that over the years.
Well, thank you.
And I remember it myself.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, she taught me a thing or two.
You mentioned about Depression days. Do you remember something about the Depression days here in DeLand? How maybe when the banks closed or something? Do you
Well,
remember
I do
anything?
remember
Do you have
I
any
remember we had to
stories
put up
on
our
that?
car. We could not afford to drive our car, so our car was put up on blocks in our garage. And it wasn't until quite some time later that we just had to walk where we went, which was good for us. It didn't hurt us at all. And we later managed to get things straightened out and to get our car off the blocks and go on our way.
Did you remember anything about the banks?
I don't remember much about it because I didn't have any money anyway, and I couldn't lose any.
I see back years ago people didn't have the cash on hand like we have now.
And my folks didn't have very much, so they couldn't lose hardly anything.
Well, my father sold his business, and the man who bought his business obviously could not pay, and so all kinds of things happened to complicate our lives right then. But later he got his business, his building back, and started his business again after he had given it up, and which he thought was the right thing to do because of health reasons. And that turned out all right in the long run, but his business was there right in the block where the middle between Indiana Avenue and West New York, on the west side of the street. And he was about in the middle. And but he made a comeback. But that was quite a bad time financially for our family because we had a lot of people in school and
Right.
the banks had failed. He lost a lot of money and a lot of things happened. And
Well, maybe just the two of you could think of something that you might want to tell about DeLand. Just kind of jump from item to item if you'd like to.
I think about the church, where I went to church most of my life down on the boulevard between Rich Avenue and Church Street. And that's where our church was located on
First
the
Baptist.
east, First Baptist on the east side of the street. And I remember one thing, I had to go to Sunday school across the street in a realtor's office because they didn't have enough room in the church for all the classes. And one of the members of the church, E.L. Hahn, owned a realty company right across the street, so he opened up that on Sunday morning and let some of the church groups go over there for Sunday school. And it was sort of interesting, and it shows how the church was going. And Reverend Brady Snowden was one of the pastors there that I remember very well. He's still living, as you know, and very remarkable man, had a very remarkable family. And the pastorium was up on East Michigan Avenue. There's a big old house up there, and that's he, I think, was the last pastor to occupy that as a pastorium. I think I remember he was the last one, and that has been torn down for a long time. But it served the church well, and I remember a lot of the pastors there, Reverend T.O. and Luther Rice, and of course those that came later, but most people do remember, but I remember those two from way back.
Do you remember anything, Miss Hutchings?
Well, when I was 9 years of age in Colorado, I tried to join the Baptist church, and I went down front, and I was ignored. I guess they felt a child of that age didn't know what he was doing. Then when I came to DeLand, I joined the Christian church, which was located on the boulevard and Wisconsin. And it was there for many years. A few years ago they moved out on West New York. But anyway, years later, on Long Island, when I was working for Republic Aviation Corporation, I joined the Baptist Church. And the reason I joined the Baptist Church, there weren't any Christian churches up there. And so they said I had to be baptized again, in spite of the fact that I was fully submerged the first time. In fact, they almost drowned me. But I didn't mind being baptized a second time, or a third time if necessary. And then when I came back to DeLand after I left Republic Aviation, I joined the First Baptist Church in DeLand.
And how well I remember you've served as deacon, and you both have taught Sunday school classes for many, many years.
I've been
and still are teaching.
Yeah.
I've been a member of the First Baptist Church here in DeLand since 1965.
Lots of good memories of
I guess it's 62 years.
Very good. And how long have you been married?
20, this is 27th year.
Yeah, oh,
27
Yeah.
years. I know it's been a good while,
Yeah.
but you lose track of time.
Yeah.
Well, can you think of anything else that you'd like to tell us?
I was thinking about some of the stores in the land. They were rather interesting, some of the stores that, those were the days where the people sold piece goods, you know. There were several dry goods stores on the boulevard. Mr. Barr had a store, a dry goods store. And the grocery stores were so unusual. Eggs were just out on the counter, you know. They weren't refrigerated. You just buy eggs out of a big basket or something. And it seems today it would be sort of horrible to think about all that stuff that's being exposed like that over days, you know. But people seem to know when stuff came in, and they, I guess hopefully buy it fresh.
Quick enough.
Yeah, I guess so they sold out quick enough, I guess. But the fact that they delivered groceries was rather interesting to me, that they would deliver them. And so many stores that were there on the boulevard were friends of my father's who came down about the same time to the land with him. Mr. Drika, Mr. Woodall, Mr. A.C. Haynes, and those two were grocers, and we bought most of our groceries from those two. We sort of varied between the two. And but the land had a little gift shop that has remained to this day called Leap and Howard's. And I always remember that because I worked there during my holiday times for years and years. And Miss Howard used to live right across the street from us. She was one of our good neighbors, and she began that store. It's still going. Still retains that
Many
same,
years.
same that same name is retained in that little store. The Cruz girls, who later ran that store for a while, and then it's under different hands now. But it's been one of the great, good gift shops in the land. And
I didn't realize it'd been here so long.
yes,
What amazes me is the prices in those days.
Yeah.
You could get a shirt laundered and pressed for 10 cents.
Oh, my.
You
We
could,
would never do our washing and all now.
you could buy a loaf of bread for 10 cents.
Oh,
For a nickel for a while.
can you believe it? Such a
Yeah.
difference.
I remember hamburger was 19 cents a pound. And I remember, I forgot how much shrimp were, but my mother would always say, if they cost more than 25 cents a pound, we don't buy them.
Hot dogs a nickel, hamburgers a dime, ice cream cones a nickel.
And probably piled up
Yeah.
several dips.
There was a very famous, we call it famous, place called the Tulip. And that was down on the boulevard between Indiana and Rich. And it was an ice cream shop, and everybody went there. Just the place to go to get something good. And they had chocolate milks, a nickel. If you had a scoop of ice cream in it, that was a dime.
Oh, my God.
One of my friends in class of 29 was Marcus Phelps. And one day Marcus and I were out, and we hadn't had lunch and didn't want to go home to try to get lunch. And we had a nickel between us. And Marcus says, I know how we can have lunch for a nickel. And they sold these little cakes for 5 cents. So he bought one of these little cakes, and we divided it, and each had half of the cake.
And probably it was larger than the little cakes you buy now.
Yeah.
It was a nickel.
Oh, strange things you remember. Of course, you remember the people.
Marcus told me about taking a young girl out on a date, and he wanted to do something to give the girl refreshments. So he bought a package of chewing gum, and they shared a package of chewing gum as refreshment.
You talk about people you remember. We remember Dr. Davis. He was one of the famous old family doctors in the land, and he was a remarkable person. And they were our next door neighbors, and so we got to know them quite well that way. And they had 2 daughters, and they grew up here in the land. But he was an unusual person. He had a watch. I remember it was the first watch I'd ever seen, a wristwatch. Not a wristwatch, I mean a pocket watch, not a wristwatch. And he would pull it out and show me. He said, "This chimes the hour, and it chimes at the half hour." And he says, "It does all kinds of things." I can remember his showing me this I thought it was a very remarkable watch. I know they have them now, but he was so pleased with that watch. And a very lovable person. People in the land just love Dr. Davis and his family.
My mother had a young doctor that she thought was the best doctor in the state of Florida. His name was Hugh West.
My folks had him too.
Very loved doctor in the land.
Very loved,
for
very
many,
much.
many years.
Yes, a
Many
very
years.
excellent person.
But in the 1920s, he was a very young doctor.
Well, I tell you, it's really been interesting. Did you have any more stories about the Navy to tell before we close? So many of those things, you know, you really need to share them because they're so interesting to people.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is that the Naval Academy is different from other educational institutions. I think all the service academies are, in that they don't just educate the mind, they educate the total person, mentally, physically, morally, and spiritually. And that's the thing I liked about a service academy education, is they educate the total person.
Well, we're very proud to say we have an admiral that lives, a retired admiral that lives in DeLand, and we love you both. You've been such outstanding people for DeLand, and I'm Betty Van Allen, and I just want to thank you for taking your time.
Well, we
to
thank
share
you for
with us.
coming.
Well, we thank you.